There is a pleasure in the pathless woods. There is a rapture on the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes. By the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more. From these are interviews in which I steal from all I may be, or have never, or have been before. From all I may be, or have been before, to mingle with the universe and feel what I can ne'er express, yet cannot all conceal. Childe Harold. On the human imagination, events produce the effects of time. Thus, he who has traveled far and seen much is apt to fancy that he has lived long, and the history that most abounds in important incidents soonest assumes the aspect of antiquity. In no other way can we account for the venerable air that is already gathering around American annals. When the mind reverts to the earliest days of colonial history, the period seems remote and obscure. The thousand changes that thicken along the links of recollections, throwing back the origin of the nation to a day so distant as seemingly to reach the mists of time. And yet 4 lives of ordinary duration would suffice to transmit from mouth to mouth, in the form of tradition, all that civilized man has achieved within the limits of the Republic. Although New York alone possesses a population materially exceeding that of either of the 4 smallest kingdoms of Europe, or materially exceeding that of the entire Swiss Confederation, it is little more than 2 centuries since the Dutch commenced their settlement, rescuing the region from the savage state. Thus, what seems venerable by an accumulation of changes is reduced to familiarity when we come seriously to consider it solely in connection with time. This glance into the perspective of the past will prepare the reader to look at the pictures we are about to sketch with less surprise than he might otherwise feel, and a few additional explanations may carry him back in imagination to the precise condition of society that we desire to delineate. It is matter of history that the settlements on the eastern shores of the Hudson, such as Claverack, Kinderhook, and even Poughkeepsie, were not regarded as safe from Indian incursions a century since, and there is still standing on the banks of the same river and within musket shot of the wharves of Albany a residence of a younger branch of the Van Rensselaers. The Van Rensselaers. A younger branch of the Van Rensselaers that has loopholes constructed for defense against the same crafty enemy. Although it dates from a period scarcely so distant. Other similar memorials of the infancy of the country are to be found scattered through what is now deemed the very center of American civilization, affording the plainest proofs that all we possess of security from invasion and hostile violence is the growth of but little more than the time that is frequently fulfilled by a single human life. The incidents of this tale occurred between the years 1740 and 1745. When the settled portions of the colony of New York, the incidents of this tale occurred between the years 1740 and 1745, when the settled portions of the colony of New York were confined to the 4 Atlantic counties, a narrow belt of country on each side of the Hudson, extending from its mouth to the falls near its head, and to a few advanced neighborhoods on the Mohawk and the Schoharie. Broad belts of the virgin wilderness not only reached the shores of the first river, but they even crossed it, stretching away into New England, and affording forest covers to the noiseless moccasin of the native warrior, as he trod the secret and bloody warpath. A bird's eye view of the whole region east of the Mississippi must then have offered one vast expanse of woods, relieved by a comparatively narrow fringe of cultivation along the sea, dotted by the glittering surfaces of lakes and intersected by the waving lines of river. In such a vast picture of solemn solitude, the district of country we design to paint sinks into insignificance, though we feel encouraged to proceed by the conviction that, with slight and immaterial distinctions, he who succeeds in giving an accurate idea of any portion of this wild region must necessarily convey a tolerably correct notion of the whole. Whatever may be the changes produced by man, the eternal round of the seasons is unbroken. Summer and winter, seedtime and harvest, return in their stated order with a sublime precision. Whatever may be the changes produced by man, the eternal round of the seasons is unbroken. Summer and winter, seedtime and harvest, return in their stated order with a sublime precision, affording to man one of the noblest of all the occasions he enjoys of proving the high powers of his far-reaching mind, encompassing the laws that control their exact uniformity, and in calculating their never-ending revolutions. Centuries of summer suns had warmed the tops of the same noble oaks and pines, sending their heats even to the tenacious roots. When voices were heard calling to each other in the depths of a forest, of which the leafy surface lay bathed in the brilliant light of a cloudless day in June, while the trunks of the trees rose in gloomy grandeur in the shades beneath. The calls were in different tones, evidently proceeding from 2 men who had lost their way and were searching in different directions for their path. At length a shout proclaimed success, and presently a man of gigantic mold broke out of the tangled labyrinth of a small swamp, emerging into an opening that appeared to have been formed partly by the ravages of the wind, and partly by those of fire. This little area, which afforded a good view of the sky, although it was pretty well filled with dead trees, lay on the side of one of the high hills or low mountains, in which nearly the whole surface of the adjacent country was broken. Here is room to breathe in," exclaimed the liberated forester as soon as he found himself under a clear sky, shaking his huge frame like a mastiff that has just escaped from a snowbank. "Hurrah! Deer slayer, here is daylight at last, and yonder is the lake." These words were scarcely uttered when the second forester dashed aside the bushes of the swamp and appeared in the area. After making a hurried adjustment of his arms and disordered dress, he joined his companion, who had already begun his disposition for a halt. "Do you know this spot?" demanded the one called Deerslayer, "or do you shout at the sight of the sun?" "Both, lad, both. I know the spot, and I'm not sorry to see so useful a friend as the sun. Now we have got the points. Now we have got the points of the compass in our minds, and once more, and 'twill be our own faults if we let anything turn them topsy-turvy again, as has just happened. My name is not Hurry Harry, if this be not the very spot where the land hunters camped the last summer and passed a week. See, yonder are the dead bushes of their bower, and here is the spring. Much as I like the sun, boy, I've no occasion for it to tell me it is noon. This stomach of mine is as good a timepiece as is to be found in the colony, and it already points to 12:30. So open the wallet and let us wind up for another 6 hours' run." At this suggestion, both set themselves about making the preparations necessary for their usual frugal but hearty meal. We will profit by this pause in the discourse to give the reader some idea of the appearance of the men, each of whom is destined to enact no insignificant part in our legend. It would not have been easy to find a more noble specimen of vigorous manhood than was offered in the person of him who called himself Hurry Harry. His real name was Henry March, but the frontiersmen having caught the practice of giving sobriquet from the Indians, the appellation of Hurry was far oftener applied to him than his proper designation, and not unfrequently he was termed Hurry Scurry, a nickname he had obtained from a dashing, reckless, offhand manner, and a physical restlessness that kept him so constantly on the move as to cause him to be known along the whole line of scattered habitations that lay between the province and the Canadas. The stature of Hurry Harry exceeded 6 feet 4, and being unusually well proportioned, his strength fully realized the idea created by his gigantic frame. The face did not discredit to the rest of the man, for it was both good-humored and handsome. His air was free, and though his manner necessarily partook of the rudeness of a border life, the grandeur that pervaded so noble a physique prevented it from becoming altogether vulgar. Deerslayer, as Hurry called his companion, was a very different person in appearance as well as in character. In stature he stood about 6 feet in his moccasins, but his frame was comparatively light and slender, showing muscles, however, that promised unusual agility, if not unusual strength. His face would have had little to recommend it except youth, were it not for an expression that seldom failed to win upon those who had leisure to examine it, and to yield to the feeling of confidence it created. This expression was simply that of guileless truth, sustained by an earnestness of purpose and a sincerity of feeling that rendered it remarkable. At times, this air of integrity seemed to be so simple as to awaken the suspicion of a want of the usual means to discriminate between artifice and truth. But few came in serious contact with the man without losing this distrust in respect for his opinions and motives. Both these frontiersmen were still young, Hurry having reached the age of 6 or 8 and 20, while Deerslayer was several years his junior. Their attire needs no particular description, though it may be well to add that it was composed in no small degree of dressed deerskins, and had the usual signs of belonging to those who passed their time between the skirts of civilized society and the boundless forests. There was, notwithstanding, some attention to smartness and the picturesque in the arrangements of Deerslayer's dress, more particularly in the part connected with his arms and accoutrement. His rifle was in perfect condition. The handle of his hunting knife was neatly carved. His powder horn was ornamented with suitable devices lightly cut into the material, and his shot pouch was decorated with wampum. On the other hand, Hurry Harry, either from constitutional recklessness or from a secret consciousness how little his appearance required artificial aids, wore everything in a careless, slovenly manner, as if he felt a noble scorn for the trifling accessories of dress and ornaments. Perhaps the peculiar effect of his fine form and great stature was increased rather than lessened by this unstudied and disdainful air of indifference. "Come, Deerslayer, fall to and prove that you have a Delaware stomach. Come, Deerslayer, fall to and prove that you have a Delaware stomach, as you say you have a Delaware education," cried Hurry, setting the example by opening his mouth to receive a slice of cold venison steak that would have made an entire meal for a European peasant. Fall to, lad, and prove your manhood on this poor devil of a doe with your teeth as you've already done with your rifle. Nay, nay, hurry. There's little manhood in killing a doe, and that too out of season, though there might be some in bringing down a painter or a catamount," returned the other, disposing himself to comply. "The Delawares have given me my name, not so much on account of a bold heart, as on account of a quick eye and an active foot. There may not be any cowardice in overcoming a deer, but certain it is there's no great valor." "The Delawares themselves are no heroes," muttered Hurry through his teeth, the mouth being too full to permit it to be fairly opened, "or they would never have allowed them loping vagabonds, the Mingos, to make them women." "That matter is not rightly understood, has never been rightly explained," said Deerslayer earnestly, for he was as zealous a friend as his companion was dangerous as an enemy. "The Mengwe fill the woods with their lies and misconstruct words and treaties. I have now lived 10 years with the Delawares, and know them to be as manful as any other nation, when the proper time to strike comes. Harkee, Master Deerslayer, since we are on the subject, we may as well open our minds to each other in a man-to-man way. Answer me one question. You have had so much luck among the game as to have gotten a title, it would seem. But did you ever hit anything human or intelligible? Did you ever pull trigger on an enemy that was capable of pulling one upon you?" This question produced a singular collision between mortification and correct feeling in the bosom of the youth that was easily to be traced in the workings of his ingenuous countenance. The struggle was short, however, uprightness of heart soon getting the better of false pride and frontier boastfulness. "To own the truth, I never did," answered Deerslayer, seeing that a fitting occasion never offered. "To own the truth, I never did," answered Deerslayer, seeing that a fitting occasion never offered. "The Delawares have been peaceably since my sojourn with them, and I hold it to be unlawful to take the life of man except in open and generous warfare." "What? Did you ever find a fellow thieving among your traps and skins, and do the law on him with your own hands, by way of saving the magistrates trouble in the settlements, and the rogue himself the cost of the suit?" "I am no trapper, Hurry," returned the young man proudly. "I live by the rifle, a weapon at which I will not turn my back on any man of my years, atween the Hudson and the St. Lawrence. I never offer a skin that has not a hole in its head beside them, which nature made to see wide or to breathe through. Aye, this is all very well in the animal way, though it makes but a poor figure alongside of scalps and ambushes. Shooting an Indian from an ambush is acting up to his own principles. And now we have what you call a lawful war on our hands. The sooner you wipe that disgrace of your character, the sounder will be your sleep. If it only come from knowing there is one enemy, the less prowling in the woods. I shall not frequent your society long, friend Natty, unless you look higher than 4-footed beasts to practice your rifle on. Our journey is nearly ended, you say, Master March, and we can part tonight, if you see occasion. I have a friend waiting for me, who will think it no disgrace to consort with a fellow creature that has never yet slain his kind. I wish I knew what has brought that skulking Delaware into this part of the country so early in the season, muttered Hurry to himself in a way to show equally distrust and a recklessness of its betrayal. Where did you say the young chief was to give you the meeting? At a small round rock near the foot of the lake, where they tell me the tribes are given to resorting to make their treaties and to bury their hatchets. This rock have I often heard the Delawares mention, though lake and rock are equally strangers to me. The country is claimed by both Mingos and Mohicans, and is a sort of common territory to fish and hunt through. in time of peace, though what it may become in wartime, the Lord only knows." "Common territory!" exclaimed Hurry, laughing out loud. "I should like to know what Floating Tom Hutter would say to that. He claims the lake as his own property in virtue of 15 years' possession, and will not be likely to give it up to either Mingo or Delaware without a battle for it." "And what will the colony say to such a quarrel? All this country must have some owner, the gentry pushing their cravings into the wilderness, even where they never dare to venture in their own persons to look at the land they own. That may be due in other quarters of the colony, Deerslayer, but it will not do here. No, not a human being, the Lord excepted, owns a foot of soil in this part of the country. Pen was never put to paper concerning either hill or valley hereaway, as I've heard old Tom say time and again, and so he claims the best right to it of any man breathing, and what Tom claims he'll be very likely to maintain. But by what I've heard you say, Hurry, this Floating Tom must be an uncommon mortal. Neither Mingo, Delaware, nor Paleface. His possession, too, has been long, by your tell, and altogether beyond frontier endurance. What's the man's history and nature?"